You're staring at your student portal, your heart racing with anxiety as you behold the state of affairs. Your marks. You failed. Dismally. Doubts creep in, but deep down, you know this moment doesn't define you. How do you face failure and turn it into fuel for success? We are joined by Lesego Rankou, MC and speaker, Golden Key Honorary member, CA, digital content creator, and co-founder of Ulwazi, Olubanzi Academy. We chat about her brush with failure during her studies, her triumph over it, and her ultimate triumph through it. We also chat about her journey from biochemical engineering to accounting in her studies, the importance of being informed in your career decisions, the practical way to gratitude, how she bridges the gap in every space she's in, finding purpose in her gap year through her daughter, and more. Enjoy. Happy New Year! Yeah, I added it in post because you guys can't sponsor me this board. And you won't believe it, like, it was on New Year's Day when I pull up my analytics and we hit 10K downloads. I think it's such a testament to, the impact that we can make as aspiring CAs, as the community of future impact creators, future difference makers. I really think that there's so much that we can do and so much hope that we can derive through this. I think there's just so much possibility, guys. And I hope that your year is better than any in your life yet. I hope that all the success comes and all the goals are achieved that you wish for in this year. Lesego, our guest today, who is an incredible CA with an incredible journey. You guys are going to actually love her story. She actually is going to be opening herself up to more mentorship this year. Hence, she's actually opened up IAC and APC mentorship for those of us aspiring CAs who are going to be writing the IAC and APC exams. It is a great opportunity to get ahead, to make sure that if you are still not sure of what this thing is, and all the newness of these different assessments, Lesego will help with all of that. So her website and that will be linked in the show notes. On to the episode. Welcome back, my people. This is the Road to CA podcast, the show for aspiring chartered accountants to inspire, empower, and inform the difference makers of tomorrow. Yo, guys, hey, today we're joined by the hostess with the mostest, the queen of the scene, the power of the hour or two. This might be that fire, guys. I'm just saying. She's certainly one of the most famous CAs today, being one of the queen bees of CA content creators. Hey, guys, we've got a CA content creator. Yes, she is. She's an honorary member of the Golden Key Society. She's a psycho difference maker for 2024. We'll definitely chat about that. And is currently a supervisor at Gold City Offshoring. Her mission, above all, however, is to disrupt the corporate world through challenging stereotypes and corporate beliefs through a biblical lens. Hey, most importantly, she likes watching K-drama, K-comedy, K-everything. She likes to read her Bible. She listens to podcasts and occasionally doom scrolls in her spare time. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's a believer. We're joined by none other than Lesego Rankou. Lesego, how are you?
That's what should have came after that.
I need the buttons. I need the buttons.
I'm good, Aluka. How are you doing?
I'm excited, obviously, as I've already expressed. I think you are in a lot of ways. So I've actually known you before we met at the previous Bridge the Gap event. You are, and I note here when I said challenging stereotypes and corporate beliefs. You are what professional South Africa needs.
Sure.
That's part of what you are and who you are. So I'm excited, man.
Ah, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much. It's a challenging task, but it's also a much needed task. So I'm glad to be the disruptor of the age.
Okay, we always go back at the beginning of the road to CA because before you became the disruptor, there was a whole lot of disruption that was happening in your life. So let's go back. Let's go back to where this whole CA thing started for you.
Sure, the journey to CASA. I love this story and I think I'll never get tired of talking about it because it's very unconventional and uncommon. So, unlike people that had dreams and beliefs of becoming a CA and knowing much about the CSA journey, I didn't have that. So, I'm originally from the Northwest Province. I grew up in the township called Ganana. I've been grandmother's child my whole life, grew up in a very warm, loving family. One thing about me, academics was my thing. I just loved school. Like, I know in black homes, you get the ones that clean, the one that loves school, the one that does sports. I was the one that did school. Don't ask me to do any chores, you know? And I carried that posture all throughout my high school experience. And I think when we had to start applying for university and people are trying to say, what are you going to do? What are you going to study? I didn't know what I wanted to study. I made up my mind eventually to say I wanted to do biochemical engineering and very vain reasons. It sounded great. It sounded intimidating. It sounded like my parents are going to be like, yo, our child is a biochemical engineer. you know but it was because I was doing physics and one of the elements on the periodic table was beryllium, and I found out that beryllium is used in medicine and it's used a lot by biochemical engineers, so that was the genius behind why I wanted to study it. I applied for it at Wits. I was so sure that this is like the only career path for me because of lack of research and also being vain at the end of the day, you know? So I got provisionally accepted, which was great. But after my matric results were released, it's not that I did terrible. I think I got high 70s. But because biochemical engineering is in the medical field, they wanted 80s, you know? So my provisional acceptance was void and null because they were like, no, ma'am, sorry, there's no space for you. And I'm like, but what do you mean? I don't have a plan B. I didn't apply anywhere else. I was
Sure.
really, really shook at that time. And I think because I've been a scholar, my parents were also a little bit confused. Like, why didn't you apply anywhere else? Like, why don't you have an alternative? Like, I had none, Alunga, like absolutely none. So I think in January of that year, that was 2014, I came to Joburg and I was really knocking on the gates of it, like, guys, surely I can squeeze me in. Like, I didn't apply anywhere else. And unfortunately, none of that was taking place. They were like, nah, ma'am, there's nothing for you. And a friend of mine, I think midway through the month in January, he told me about this university called Monash. And Monash was under Australia at that time in 2014, and I didn't know much about it. It's an Australian university. The only other bigger universities that I knew were the ones that we know: UJ, UP, UCT, Stellenbosch. And I'm like, Monash, what am I going to say? People, Monash, what is it? But I had no choice because their academic year started in March, and so I went to go and applied. And my first major, actually, when I applied at Monash, was economics. And again, very vain. I didn't do research. The counselor told me that you like mathematics, try economics. And because I wasn't trying to think for myself, I was like, sharp, I'll do economics. That's how I majored in economics. But I think 6 months into the semester, I already knew like this was not going to work. Like, I'm not vibing with statistics, I'm not vibing with the graphs in macroeconomics and microeconomics. So I changed my major to accounting. And now I should mention accounting was a subject that I did in high school, but I really, it was the worst one of them. Like if ever I chose subjects, accounting would never be the option. But funny enough, in that first 6 months, I was really enjoying accounting, and then that's why it was easier for me to change my major from economics to accounting. I did so well in it, Alunga, throughout first year, second year, third year, even though I was turning up in varsity, guys, I was like the baddie with blonde hair, crop top, but I was sitting in front answering corporate questions like, sir, I don't think this valuation is correct, but that time blonde hair, crop top, that was like my vibe. So I really
Yeah.
did enjoy it, and I also enjoyed playing sports all throughout varsity. I was captain of the netball team. I was into running. I was into going to the gym. And I think that also kept me sane. But then I think after we graduated, I was under the assumption that I was going to work. Like, I didn't know again, CA journey. I still didn't know what it was. So I was surprised when my friends told me, no, we needed to apply for our fourth year and our honors year. I'm like, what honors? What's that? They're like, yeah, no, this is the CA journey. There's like 7 years or 4 more years to go. It's a 7 year in total minimum journey. And I'm like, hey, nah, guys. I told my family after wearing my pura pura, I'm going back home. So that's the beginning of my CA journey that year when it was a bunch of confusion, a bunch of uncertainty, and also not really grasping how big this journey is. So CTA throwed hands, like it throwed
Yeah.
major hands. I started seeing marks come back. I was getting 30%, 40%. And now the scholar in me was traumatized because I'm a tutor. I was tutoring accounting. I'm captain of the netball team. I was literally flying through my degree. I don't think I've ever stumbled. I think my only stumbling block was statistics in first year, and that's when I knew no, change economics. But accounting, the flight was high up. So when those marks came back, they shook me to the absolute core. Like I just kind of couldn't reconcile how am I getting these marks? Maybe I had an idea of what a failure looks like, but I was like, it can't look like me. Like, how am I getting 40%, 30%? And I really did struggle to come to terms with those marks. And I remember even through CTA, I was so sure that I was not going to make it. I kept calling my dad and telling them, like, listen, guys, take me out of the school because this is not going well and it's not going to end well. It's going to end in tears. But I think my parents, because of my track record, they kind of thought, nah, man, this girl is always doing well. Maybe she's just having a bad day or like a little stumbling blocks here and there in the months. But I started developing a lot of anxiety and depression and panic attacks. And to the extent that one time when I was studying with a friend of mine at her apartment, she had asked me a question, and we were studying, I think it was management accounting. And she asked me a question, and I completely blacked out. I couldn't answer the question. And I really started having a physical panic attack. And luckily, my friend, I don't even know why she had this, but maybe she had a condition. She had an oxygen mask, and they had to give me oxygen. That's how bad, like, my anxiety
Yeah.
was. It was bad,
Sure.
Alinda.
Sure. Sure.
And so I don't need to tell you, at the end of that year, and I couldn't recover. I really couldn't recover from this identity questioning slash anxiety attacks slash depression slash, and I also did something that was uncommon in that year. I stopped tutoring. I stopped being captain of the netball team. I just stopped netball in total. I stopped going to the
Sure.
gym, like, because I think the anxiety was just crippling for me. And at the end of the year, I couldn't recover. I failed 3 modules out of 4, which is like you failed for real. And that was my first time I failed an academic year. Like, forget failing tests, but an academic year,
Yeah.
like
The whole
the
thing.
whole thing, I'm like, come on, not even a supplementary? What do you mean? You know? But I failed the whole thing. And I didn't even know how to tell my family. When I got my results, I remember I was at my grandmother's house. I was in a bedroom, and just getting out of that room, I just didn't know how this conversation was going to go. But I stomached the courage to tell them. And I think everybody was a little bit shocked. They didn't know how to receive the information. And I guess to make my parents even more shocked, 2 weeks later, I found out that I'm pregnant. You know, now that's a double whammy. That's a double whammy. They're like, you are what? Yeah, you are.
Bah!
Going
Bah!
from failing CTA to what are you doing? What are you busy doing at school? You know? And that was just a slap to, I guess, feeling so disappointed in myself, disappointing my parents, and also validating that you are a proper failure. You go from diligent, star athlete, tutor, to going to fail pregnancy at the age of 21. Wow, girl, you have
Yeah.
hit the road on your face, you know? And I remember 2019 or 2018, sorry, was a very difficult and demanding year because that was the year where I decided not to try again. I didn't go back to school or anything. My friends that some of them failed CTA with me, but they tried again. Others that passed went to go on to do their articles. But for me, I was at home watching crime investigation every day and my body was changing, and I'm depressed for real. And it's funny that,
Yeah.
like, at 21, you would think the pregnancy would be my biggest regret. Nothing. It was that failure. Like, that failure was
Sure.
heavy. Like, forget that my body is changing, but I was like, how did I fail school? That's how deep my identity was in my
Mm.
academics. And I think it's only after my daughter was born where I really was getting out of this black hole, this dark hole that I had created, because she was born in August of 2018. So for a good 8 months, I've been in the trenches. And so when she was born,
Mm.
I think I had an epiphany that my daughter needs to survive and thrive. I can't just wallow in my
Mm.
depression. I'm also learned enough to know that I can do something about my situation. And also,
Mm.
I didn't want her to grow up with this narrative that, like, when she came into the picture, my life just became a shamble and a shame.
You.
So I really just had like a whole conversation with God, like saying, God, help me out of this place. Like, I know I might have disappointed a lot of people. I might have disappointed you too. But if you are really a good God, give me the courage to try again. And I remember I told my dad, please just pay for my fees one more time. I know Monash was very expensive. I know I failed that CTA year dismally. But it doesn't even have to be a Monash. Like, I can do UNISA, distant learning. I've never done distant learning, but I'm willing. I just want to try again. And my dad took a chance in me, paid for my fees, and I started the year 2019 CTA attempt number two, you know, this time with a 4-month-old baby. Now, the circumstances are
Sure.
saying, ma'am, you're not going to make it. But Lesego has decided I am going to make it, you know?
Mm.
And that's the posture of getting into 2019, is that decision actually changed my life because although the days in 2019 were like one of the worst days to date, like I had a really tough 2019. I had lost a tremendous amount of weight from stress, from breastfeeding,
Mm.
from being a new parent, being 23 at that time when she was born, 22 going on 23 when she was born, and understanding the concept that I need to recover mentally from being a failure, because that's all I was telling myself for the whole of 2018. So it was a mental game. But that decision kept me rooted throughout the year. And by God's grace, I can't even take any pride from this. It was God's grace that got me through that year because it was a really, really challenging year. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I'd lost weight. I wasn't going out. I'm assimilating to distant learning. I'm learning to figure things out by myself. There's no turn to your neighbor and ask a question. There's no pick up your hand and ask the lecturer. I am my lecturer. I am the student next to me. I am my teacher. I am everything, and a mom at the same
Yeah.
time. And by God's grace, I got through that year. And I was so happy to pass that year that when I started working at one of the big four firms, for me, my biggest highlight was actually being around people and realizing that my story is
Mm.
changing. Because for the whole of 2019, I was by myself. So when I stepped into
Mm.
corporate, I never saw corporate as this very, like, big bad place or this very intimidating place. I was just so happy to see people, man. Like, I came with an energy for days. Like, people were like, who's this girl? Why is she so excited? Why is she so happy? But I was just kind of like,
This is audit. What's your
what's your
problem?
problem? And I'm there telling jokes, getting my work done. Like people were impressed at the
Yeah.
speed at which I was grasping concepts, not knowing that I had to study IFRS 15 in 3 hours while my child was taking a nap. You know what I
Phew.
mean? It was things like that that gave me an advantage because I was grasping concepts like this, man. Because I was in training the year before. And even with working under time pressure, like I knew how to sit in difficult audit rooms because I had to sit in 2019 by myself and figure things out. So I wasn't intimidated by partners when they asked me questions. I wasn't intimidated by ranking and senior management and all these corporate struggles that people have because I felt like 2019 was the foundation of my view to corporate. And it became such a defining moment for me that the year that I thought was like my biggest failure became my biggest triumph, even up to today. And that's how I managed my corporate journey, where I was able to get good ratings as an audit trainee. I was able to make friends with partners, with managers, with people that were younger than me as well, because remember, I'm 2 years behind. So when I was in first year, my peers, the ones that I studied with, they were in their third year. So there's a certain level of humility that I also had to have to say, my guy, I know I'm in first year, but you and I are the same age. But I never had that. I just kind of embraced the journey that I didn't see myself delayed. I just saw myself on time and being able to marry being with a younger audience and an older audience and carry the tension of both. And even after I finished my articles, that is still my view on corporate. I feel like because I call myself a disruptor, is because I've always walked in a posture of disruption. I mean, I never said this in the CA journey that for me, I grew up in the township, but I always went to a private school. So having that view from a very young age, I've always had two conflicting views taking place. I go home to the poorest township, but I go to one of the richest schools in town. And I always had a dual perspective. So this disruptor mentality didn't start when my daughter was born or when I failed. I think God was building on it. And there were certain defining moments like failing CTA that kind of broke the camel's back and took me off. But yeah, that's my CA journey in a long nutshell.
Okay. So Lesego, there's a lot to break down that I think
A lot.
I have to do this justice by taking them and bringing them to light. So the first thing was, and this was even just to chronicle through your journey, the first thing was the importance of learning to think for yourself,
Sure.
which is something that happened in a bit of a messy way. You stumbled upon CA. That's what happened to you.
Yep.
I think there's a culture for us to always do what mom or dad said, always do what the lecturer said, what they say, what he or she says. But what do you think? And it's so important to get to the bottom of that. Otherwise, you're actually going to be, it's going to be harder than it needs to be. I mean, just think back to the biochemical uh,
Engineering.
engineering thing. Yeah, think back to that. I mean, if if you were so boom, you couldn't become a biochemical engineer. Now, if you had really been resolute on the decision, if you had thought about it, maybe you would have gotten into, maybe you would have even taken a gap year. I don't know,
Yep.
but economics, you get into economics because someone else told you to get into
Yep.
economics. You go into CA, even, obviously God's grace, but you get into CA because your friends are going into CA.
Yep.
you know and it's just all these moments where it's like, I'm just gonna let the
The
wind
way.
take me where
Yep.
it takes me. um but learning to think for yourself, it really helps with control.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of stability in just saying, I made this decision because of X, Y, and Z. It was informed. I think another big one is that you weren't adequately informed, like when you picked biochemical engineering. Um, but taking control of your life, a lot of it is learning how to think for
Sure.
yourself. So that's the first thing. The second one is wow, and it was just like, sure, this was heavy for me. Like when you mentioned how the biggest stress on your mind wasn't your child coming in, it was the failure you had
Sure.
experienced, which was like, yo, for me, it raises the environment that we've created, the psychological environment we've created around failure. And I wouldn't put it on anyone. I wouldn't say it's anyone's fault, but that's something that I largely want to rectify, improve with the podcast. Failure is part and parcel with all great things, and it's part and parcel with learning. So if you've never failed, you've probably never learned the lessons you need to learn.
Sure.
And when we have these failures, they shouldn't break us to the point that it broke you. But it did, because I think there's no psychological safety around it. There's definitely home. You're thinking, what are they going to think at home? Because they've always seen me succeed and they praise me for my successes and they scold me for my failures. What are they going to think at school? Everyone thinks if you fail the year, you're a failure. You're useless. You're not meant to be. You don't fit in. If you fail in corporate, you're that outcast. All these environments are creating this psychologically unsafe environment that we really need to create. We need to foster a safer space in.
Sure.
So again, you're doing great work in helping with that. Your story is phenomenal. I think it really does desensitize us to this thing called failure. It's not a taboo.
Sure.
In fact, it's very real, and it'll probably knock on your door during CTA. It'll probably.
But
So
if it
that
does, just don't be shocked.
like but I think it inevitably will, because even the top student, right, who was getting 80s since first year, will come to CTA and test one, boom, 60. From 80 to 60, that's
I
yep.
went from 80 to 40. Like, that's even half. Half.
But like, even if it's 80 to 60, it's hectic, because now your identity is, I'm an 80
Yeah.
student, I get
Yeah.
distinctions. So the moment you don't, who are you?
Yeah.
So that's the second one. The third one is the importance of having a purpose to persist.
Sure.
There's a reason, as much as it was God's grace in your view, and in a Christian view, there was a reason you got through that year, that 29 that 2018 2019 year. And that was because this kid also needs a future.
Yeah.
This kid needs something. And I feel like purpose is the one thing that invariably will make you more resilient. I think when you have a purpose behind anything that's deep, you can probably get through. Like the quote goes, when you know why, how becomes easy. Not that it was easy, but it becomes
Yeah.
possible. Absolutely possible. And you'll find a way. So the purpose to persist, if you can find that purpose in whatever it is you do, I feel like you're golden. There's two more. There's two more. It's just there was a lot.
Deeper.
This is
Deeper,
your
man
fault,
of
eh?
God. Deeper.
This is your.
Deeper.
Then the 2019 to 2020 shift. So that was when you got back to corporate. The big lesson that came to my mind is around gratitude. I mean, the way you assumed that opportunity when you got to corporate, the way you were so open, the way you're so hungry, the way you were so, you know, just everything you did was in the furtherance of great things.
Sure.
And it was because you were grateful for the opportunity. Big thing in my mind is this idea that I was thinking about the other day, that gratitude and appreciation is not about, or rather, gratitude is not about appreciation. It's about deprivation. It was because you had that year with no one
Sure.
that the moment that someone was in the room, it meant everything.
Sure.
It meant, wow, let's be here. Let's be open. Let's be energetic. Let's be enthusiastic because, goodness gracious, the way it was then,
Sure.
this is 1,000 times better now. So, so operationally, if you feel like you're an ungrateful person, I'm telling you, just abstain.
Mhm.
Just take that thing out of your life for a month. You'll see. You'll see just how much it was actually meaning so much to you. If you're a bit of a spoiled person like sometimes I am, maybe ask your mother if you live at home. Ask your mother to just stop cooking for you for a month. Whew.
I
Whew.
hope you're live.
You're gonna appreciate that lady. Yeah. Yo, yo, you're gonna love her. So deprivation is the way to appreciation. That was the lesson that I learned there. And the last one, which is the one that you sort of mentioned at the end, is, and I don't know if this is a lesson, but maybe it's just an observation of you. You've been to be continued in part 2. See you next week.